We're back with more NBA playoff coverage, and in this one, I will be covering all of the Game 4 action that took place. So to get things started, we'll go with the Thunder versus Grizzlies match, and honestly, again, with how the first 3 ball games went, you would probably be correct in predicting this series to finish in a sweep for the Thunder. Even in the few moments where the Grizzlies were able to make their own strides in this one and make a glimpse, a bit of a push towards potential victory, there was something that they always had to face in the midst of it. They said no chance in game 1. Let's get that straight. Absolutely no shot. Game 2, same kind of thing, leaking over from game 1 in terms of defensive issues, even though their offense stepped up late. Then a game where, honestly, things looked the most promising. Your superstar player goes down, and then you collapse without him. And now in this game, you expect to try and win without him being on the court. And with the Thunder having every advantage imaginable. So it was going to be a difficult task, but they had to at least try. And they would, to their credit, get off to a similar hot start in this game against the Thunder in Game 4. Now, that wouldn't necessarily last because the Thunder would take back the lead again by the end of the first quarter. But this was a close game through and through for the majority of it. And the signs were definitely there early that this was not going to be an easy bout for the Thunder. Now, of course, they still ran sequences where they were able to impose their will on defense, get their hands in passing lanes and deflect passes, get steals to convert to easy, fast break points and transition offense. A lot of those things worked for them still in this one, but it was being met with some element of resistance in this one. The Grizzlies, for one of the few times in this series, were just not going to take any of this and allow it to happen. They were going to have responses up their sleeves. And time and time again, with players like Scottie Pippen Jr. and Santi Aldama most prevalently, they were able to generate enough offense to at least be within striking distance at every plausible point in the game. Now, of course, you would like your guys, your core guys, and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane to take more of a lead in this situation. But any help from potential role players is a plus. And the second quarter would see more of the same be reflected here, because while the Thunder would have a lead at the end, they were only up by a single point after a couple of Scottie Pippen Jr. free throws. And it's interesting because, Scottie Pippen Jr. for a large part of this series had been struggling, and he had a better game in Game 3, but with him not even necessarily having any sort of physical advantage whatsoever, for him to be stepping up in that way was huge for them, and it kept them, once more, within the realm of potential victory against a team as dominant as this one has been all season in terms of margin of victory. All you can ask for in this spot is to give yourselves a chance and to, whether you win or lose this game, go out with pride. The Grizzlies would be able to take back the lead a few different times in the third quarter, but their defense started to weaken a little bit, especially with their offense not being able to necessarily have a counter because they would try to get Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. going at this point of time, but seemingly nothing gave consistently enough for them to match. So, I mean, the Thunder never got too far out of their reach. They only reached like a 5-point lead at this point. But entering the fourth quarter, once more, those stars did not show up. It was going to be a wrap. Jaren Jackson Jr. hit the ground running with an early make, but he just, over the course of the rest of this game, took some pretty stupid shots. Decisions that I honestly just had to question in the moment, and that any person, even if you weren't necessarily knowledgeable about basketball, would question. Like, these were point-blank range misses that were just being accrued and hurting the Grizzlies' offense overall. So as that kind of stuff would continue, and as Desmond Bane would also join in this just lack of, I guess, efficiency here alongside him, the Thunder were eventually able to, during this fourth quarter, take a 12-point lead. By that point, with around 3 minutes left, it looked like the game was going to be over, just straight up. But they would show some fight until the very end. I kid you not. Desmond Bane would start to get himself going with a couple of free throws, and then you had Vince Williams Jr. hit a three-pointer from the corner, which is a rare occurrence for him. Then another Santi Aldama three-pointer would get the game within 2. All of a sudden, the Thunder could very well be had. At least that's what some of these players were thinking. Now, of course, being the team that they are, they would have a great response in the moment with Jalen Williams hitting a jumper because, of course, but Scottie Pippen Jr., not to be outdone, would get another shot at it. Then they would force the miss on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who had caught stride in the second and third quarters of the game, but at this point in the fourth quarter, they held him in check at the right possible moment. And with around a minute left in the game, they had a chance to tie it up. They would get the ball, and naturally, Scottie Pippen Jr. going off the way he had in this game must have felt that he needed to put it all on himself to get them a bucket and tie it up, because nothing else seemed to be consistent in that moment. They had Chet Holmgren guarding him, and fortunately for Oklahoma City, he was able to force the turnover as Scottie Pippen Jr. drove on the baseline by just getting his long arms in there and just taking the ball away. By that point, and especially with the free throws that follow, a double sequence of free throws paired up with Lucian Storch also getting a few. Once more, it felt like the season was done, but Vince Williams Jr. would give them some more life with a quick three-point make, though it would be taken right back out of them with what you could consider the dagger, with a just beautiful, pure fadeaway jumper in the mid-range from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to put them up by 5. Maybe this is a sequence of too little too late, but Desmond Bane would actually hit a three-pointer, and then Jalen Williams, who was fouled on the ensuing possession, would actually miss his first free throw. The Grizzlies would get the ball back, and the Thunder, recognizing that they were on the verge of allowing a bonus for Memphis, decided to just foul Desmond Bane immediately, forcing him to take only 2 shots. And while he would make the first free throw, he had to intentionally miss, but with just under a full second left, it would take the grandest of miracles to take place, and that just did not happen. So the Grizzlies season would end, albeit in a tough way, but they did finish out the series in a somewhat respectable way, suffering a 117 to 115 loss at the hands of the Thunder. While it is a series sweep for them, you can at least say that the Memphis team did not go down without a fight. As per some of the metrics for the Thunder here, Shea would have 38 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals, just a single turnover on 13 of 24 shooting. Jalen Williams would have 23 points, 4 assists on fire, 5 assists and 4 rebounds on 10 of 21 shooting. Isaiah Hartenstein, Chet Holmgren, and Isaiah Joe would all have 11 points each. And overall, they would shoot 43.6% from the field. In no universe should a team who shoots just 20% from the from 3-point line on 7 of 35 shooting should ever win a basketball game. But again, the Thunder, with their ability to get downhill and generate offense, and then also draw as many fouls as they did, it did keep the Grizzlies' defense generally honest. So that's, like, even if that efficiency is low, they still have so many other ways they can just get you buckets and scores. Also helped, too, that the Grizzlies, again, down the stretch here, while they weren't necessarily too glaring, especially when it got to that early to middle portion of the fourth quarter, just giving them a ball and handing it to them that consistently, 21 times compared to the Thunder having just 8. And as a result, the Thunder scored 32 points off of those turnovers compared to just 9 for the Grizzlies. The accumulation of these things hurt them in the long run, even though they were doing their best. As for the Grizzlies, Santi Aldama and Desmond Bane would finish with 23 points each. Scottie Pippen Jr. had one of his finest outings in the league since entering, with a 30-point, 11 rebound, and 4 assist game. Now, he would foul out at the end, which ended up being tough for them. But again, he was going to get picked on. They were still doing it to an extent, with just being able to match up way better against him than he was able to match up against them. It's as simple as that. Like, he's just not physically capable of lasting in such a situation like this. Jaren Jackson Jr. would finish with just 12 points and 4 rebounds on 3 of 12 shooting. Horrible. Desmond Bane also, to get those 23 points, shot 7 of 20 from the field. So you mean to tell me a combined 10 of 32 shooting from your other co-stars is acceptable in this climate? That's why they ended up losing. That's exactly why. I mean, even Vince Williams Jr., for crying out loud, had 11 on much better shooting. So when you see that kind of stuff, man, it's just rough. And honestly, the Thunder, obviously, they go on to advance. They are awaiting their next opponent. And they were, honestly, able to give themselves ample time to do so. But as for the Grizzlies, man, when I'm looking at this, I'm not going to lie. First thing that stands out is what Desmond Bane just did during this series. Like, he struggled. Yes, the scouting stats will say that in these 4 games, he averaged 15.3 points and 6.8 rebounds with 3.3 assists. But at the same time, he had 3.8 turnovers per game in this series, along with shooting just 31.7% from the field and just 21.9% from 3. We're talking about a person who was literally shooting 39.2% from three in the regular season, and also a respectable 48.4% from the field. That is a massive drop off from someone who was considered to be one of the better co-stars to a superstar player, and Ja Morant in this case, in the league. That is just unacceptable. And then honestly, we can argue that Jaren Jackson Jr. to an extent was even worse. The DPOY candidate made waves this season and notched the only All-Star nod for the Grizzlies this season, putting up numbers reminiscent to a few of his career highs. And yet, in this series, he averaged just 16 points per game on 37.9% shooting from the field overall, and also 27.3% from the three-point line, with 2.8 turnovers per game, just 1.5 assists per game as well. When your stars aren't showing up like that, that exacerbated the issue for them. It was going to be bad in this one without Ja Morant, and they were obviously going to be overmatched even with him because of how great this Thunder team has been. But you needed every single one of your guys on their A game and at their best to knock this team off. And since that didn't happen, they suffered the expected defeat. And probably, I guess the last couple of games weren't necessarily easy, but a sweep is a sweep. Maybe they're not all built equal. And honestly, with the Thunder getting themselves in these positions over just the last two, having to just gun out wins at the end, grind things out, then, I don't know what that spells for them. They should probably be okay, though, because, again, they're that versatile of a team. But what we know for sure is that the Grizzlies are eliminated from playoff contention here. Moving on to the Nuggets and the Clippers game on Saturday, and this one was one of the best games I'd seen play out. Not even just this season. But that's besides the point. The Clippers would generate some offense early with Ivica Zubac getting a bucket to go. But with how things were, with how they were matching up against each other, again, some of the same mismatches and miscommunications were still in play from the first few games in this one. But the Clippers had a little bit of a trick up their sleeves, I guess. They got in Ben Simmons for a little bit, and he guarded Nikola Jokic. In that situation, I don't know, he was actually able to provide some good defense. They, for whatever reason, decided to get Vlatko Kanchar involved in a play, and they were able to get in there for an easy steal, allowing Ben Simmons to score his only points of the night on a dunk. And then he managed to get a block in the same sequence. Now, of course, even with him somehow being able to make things tougher on that Nuggets offense, the reality is that Nikola Jokic is still Nikola Jokic. And he would get an improbable fucking 3-point buzzer beater at the end of the first quarter to give the Nuggets a 5-point lead. Because of course he did. DeAndre Jordan would also open up the second quarter by getting a bucket against his former team, which, those have come very few and far between for him because he's just not good anymore. We can't act like he is. Ben Simmons, again, in that time, it hurt them too that they were already dealing with foul trouble issues because Ben Simmons already had 3 and had to sit out for a large portion of that game. even with him playing well, he probably would have remained in there because his minutes weren't all that bad. But, you know, you don't provide much else of value to the roster, and you're accruing up fouls like that rapidly. So they're not indebted to continue playing you for all that time. I'll tell you that. Kawhi Leonard also continued to be the complementary force to James Harden that we know he can be. He was a little quiet in this period, but he would more than make himself serviceable by getting other teammates involved at the time. Derrick Jones Jr. and Nicholas Batum were able to get the Clippers in great striking distance, even tying up the ball game. But they did still try to send the double teams, and it felt like Jokic did a better job of anticipating them. Outside of sending those double teams and potentially a blitzer, they still were not necessarily able to account for him in any way. He was just racking up the total rebounds. He was literally playing mind games with this defense, and then he was just scoring at timely moments. It's not even necessarily like he was scoring in the flashiest of ways, but every single time he scored, it felt like the energy in the Clippers stadium, to some extent, was just deflating bit by bit every time. And that would continue for a little while longer. I mean, the third quarter would start out as planned for both teams, being the typical chess match that it had been throughout this series so far. But after the Clippers would make a couple of routine plays on back-to-back possessions, with Zubac getting a beautiful hook shot in over Jokic, and then Kawhi also having a nice backdoor cut for a layup, the Nuggets would proceed to go on a pretty large run of like 18-5 in between this time and near the start of the fourth quarter, where the Nuggets would keep it churning with Jokic continuing to affect the entire game. I mean, literally on the last basket at the end of the third quarter, Murray just gets a hell of a fucking dime from Jokic to put in a smooth layup at the rim. Then he just gets such a shot, an easy shot in close inside the restricted area, and another favorable roll gets him the bucket and the Nuggets a 22-point lead. The Clippers would be able to just surge completely because the Nuggets would keep it going for a little while longer with the help of Christian Braun. But at this point, the trio of Harden, Leonard, and Powell started to get truly acclimated to the moment, and it was contagious throughout the entire team. I mean, the intensity on the glass ramped up. They were able to get some steals that turned into high-octane transition possessions and just easy fast break plays that got the crowd into it. All of a sudden, this wasn't looking great for the Nuggets in terms of the overall outcome, as the Clippers, after being down for that much time, were able to go on a massive 30s to under 10s run, capped off by a clutch offensive rebound in which Bogdan Bogdanovic actually muscled out Nikola Jokic for the rebound and got a layup to go, giving the Clippers a lead temporarily. Jokic would then go to the free throw line after such a phantom call, I'm not going to lie. They tried to call an offensive foul on him, And I'm like, that's not even remotely an offensive foul. I guess the first one was missed because he was still amped up about it. The second one had a very fortuitous bounce, though, but it still went in. So now the game was tied. And after another forced miss on their end, in which the successful double team of Kawhi Leonard was engineered, and he was forced to take up a shot from very deep three-point range, which is not necessarily in his forte. So the Nuggets would get the ball back easily. And as Jokic would make his way down the court, he would clear everybody out and call for an isolation play in the post. Zubac is guarding him. Right person to be guarding him. Like I said in the very first game, they're going to see each other the entire series. There's no way of getting around it. It just is what it is. So we would get that here for one of the more important moments in the ballgame, and the chance to take the lead. Now Zubac, to his credit, actually does a nice job of playing defense on him. But Nikola Jokic just manages somehow to wear Zubac down for enough time and distract him to still get the bucket in. He pirouettes a good 3 times with his pivot foot still in constant motion. And he fades back away from the basket, doing his signature soundboard shuffle move to get in a clutch 2-pointer and force the Clippers to reconvene and draw up a play of their own to respond. Now their response coming out of the break wouldn't necessarily go as planned because they were trying to get James Harden seeking out an easy drive against Nikola Jokic once more, which had been working for them consistently. They held their own on this one. And that distraction, though, would allow Ivica Zubac to have an easy attempt at a putback, which he would get, forcing another tie with just 8 seconds left. Now, the Nuggets were going to have to match it. And they would also not be able to get their initial plan executed. But still, that sort of, I guess, mistake, if you will, led to one of the most interesting moments you will ever lay witness to in an NBA game. Because Nikola Jokic would once again pull off an isolation, or attempt to pull off an isolation possession on Ivica Zubac. And this time he was just encamped at the 3-point line, trying to back him down. So we go for the soundboard shuffle again as Kawhi Leonard makes his way over to the 3-point line. And the shot is going up, and it's going up, and it's going up, and it appears as though after just a few seconds, you would think that it's probably going to miss. Clearly, Aaron Gordon had the notion that it probably wasn't going to be good too. Now, granted, from his perspective, he's standing in the dunker spot, which he has typically occupied as a member of this team in situations just like these. Because you have to account for Jokic in such a way where the defense is converging into the very middle of the lane. And usually when that happens, those defenders do not spot the simple pocket pass awaiting them backdoor at the hands of the connection between Jokic and Gordon. So, naturally expecting that, there was a little bit of anticipation on his end. And he would take quite the leap of faith from the dunker spot, going upwards and over the rim as the ball gets closer and closer to him. It is becoming much clearer then that it will miss. It will be an air ball. and Aaron Gordon manages to track it down at the perfect moment. And his hands get on the ball, and he dunks it home, which effectively ended the game. Initially, they had to review it because it was so close. All of this happened, and Aaron Gordon was able to get his hands on the ball with just near a tenth of a second left. So he didn't have much time to get the ball in his hands, put it in the basket, and get it out of his hands before the buzzer sounded off. But they tried and looked at multiple angles. They pulled out all the stops, and under that review, they determined that he did, in fact, just beat the buzzer with a put-back dunk to win the Nuggets the game and tie up the series as it goes back to Denver. I could not believe what I witnessed in that moment, which seems to just be the requisite for any of the fucking Nuggets games that have been nationally televised this season for the most part, if they haven't blown somebody out or gotten blown out. Even with that being said, though, you're always bound to just see something that is quite unique, and the Nuggets were able to provide that here in clutch time. It might have literally saved their chances in this series. Because to allow a team to come back from down that much and be in danger of going down 1-3, heading back home, and then knowing that you have to play another one in Los Angeles, that would have been a much different story altogether. But the Nuggets were able to avoid that thanks to Aaron Gordon. I mean, kid you not. Now granted, Jokic too would perform exceptionally well, even if that last shot attempt wasn't necessarily optimal for him. This game would see him put up 20 or more points in a playoff game, which had been the case for him in 34 now of the last 35 playoff appearances to this point, which is just absurd, as he would put up 36 points, 21 rebounds, and 8 assists with just 2 turnovers on 14 of 25 shooting with 3 threes. Christian Braun and Michael Porter Jr. both had pretty good minutes and would both put up 17 points. Jamal Murray certainly struggled, 13 points on 5 of 17 shooting with 7 rebounds and 7 assists. Aaron Gordon, 14 points, 5 assists and 6 rebounds. Not necessarily a good game by his standards, but it was enough to give the Nuggets the edge, and he quite literally scored the most important 2 points and got the most important rebound at the like, if he waited any longer, it would not have converted. But he was able to sky up over James Harden, as Harden is just trying his best to reach his hand up and get a hold of him. He just suffered a kind of poster, I guess. As for the Clippers, Harden would put up 15 points, 11 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks on 5 of 11 shooting. Zubac had 19 points and 12 rebounds on 7 of 13, well, 9 of 14 shooting. Norm Powell had 22 points and 4 rebounds on 7 of 13 shooting with 4 threes, including some timely ones during that run, which was a 34-16 overall run, and even including the Aaron Gordon game winner, which was, by the way, his very first of his NBA career. Kawhi Leonard would have 24 points on 10 of 22 shooting with 2 threes, also adding 9 rebounds and 2 steals. So, this series, again, it just continues to heat up. That's how I know that Game 3 was just a complete anomaly. Like I said, we are in for a series that can potentially go to 7, and I am here for it. Every single second of this series. Like, there's just no way to get around it. If you can have shit like that go down, man, it is literally so easy to assume. Moving on to the Pistons and the Knicks. In this one, the Pistons honestly had another sluggish start. I mean, I'm not going to lie, their offensive rebounding, especially from the likes of Jalen Duren, was very strong to start off the ball game, and it did buy them a few extra possessions to steal away from the Knicks. But the overall issue was that they were not converting enough. For a time, they were shooting so damn inefficiently, bro. And the Knicks were honestly not necessarily much better off in that regard. But their volume and their ability to at least make a few more created a lot of their early distance in this one. Not to mention that their defense overall, with being able to not only hold Detroit to that low shooting percentage, but continue to be pests on ball, getting physical off the ball so that other players can't necessarily distract and just completely deviate from the scheme. They would be able to force a number of different turnovers that were just inexcusable, which again has been the theme for the entire series. And just a problem for the Pistons at this point, because it always seems to get the better of them. And you would think that with this, they would at least respond on the defensive front on their end a lot better than they did. Like, literally, there was a sequence that they have an errant turnover in the first quarter, and there's literally only one person back down on the other side getting back on defense. Like, that's not necessarily a good sign. Now, granted, in the second quarter, the Knicks would continue their stretch for the most part, but as they started to settle in, the Pistons were able to make the Knicks just as uncomfortable on their front. And the Pistons, with a good amount of second chance opportunities, were able to get themselves back into this. Tobias Harris single-handedly, after struggling for all that time, would get himself involved with an and one, and then another and one to bring the game within 7. You also had Tim Hardaway Jr. make one of his first shots of the game after being scoreless and held to no field goal makes whatsoever. Ausar Thompson will also end off the quarter well with an alley-oop of his own to bring the Pistons within 7, capping off an 11-2 run to end off the quarter. Now, I did not end up watching the third quarter at all, or most of the fourth quarter for that matter. I was busy, but as I was tracking it on my phone, I did note that the Pistons once more had themselves a grand third quarter in this series. Like, the third quarter, they've owned it overall. And it looked like they could once more put themselves in great position to close it out. I mean, they held the Knicks to 14 points for crying out loud. They were the ones with a 7-point lead this time, and they would continue piling it on, going up by as much as 10 to start off the fourth quarter. But the Knicks were just able to continue inching themselves back into the game with decent shooting and also just opportunistic plays on defense because they just continue to hand them turnover after turnover after turnover. So now all of a sudden, we get the game within just a few points. As Jalen Brunson would go down for a little bit with an injury during this time, but he would storm right back and make his presence felt and then some, getting a bank layup and then also hitting a sidestep three-pointer. Now Dennis Schroeder and Cade Cunningham had a pair of responses, but not to be outdone. Even though Jalen Brunson would get another go, this last 2 minutes and 43 seconds would become all about Karl Anthony Towns. He would hit a pretty deep three-pointer from what I saw in post. And then also, with a minute and 29 left, to bring the Knicks within 2, he hit a tough fucking fadeaway jumper, putting a crazy fucking spin move on the baseline, fading away from Jalen Duren, who, bruh, as tough as it is to say, he got fraud on that play. It was a grand one to watch, but he wasn't finished. He wasn't finished because with just 47 seconds left, he would hit another deep three from essentially the Pistons logo with Jalen Duren guarding him, and they would take the lead. Now, both teams had multiple chances to at least put the game away, but the Pistons turned the ball over. And then the Knicks on this one had Jalen Brunson get what appeared to be a good look, but he just missed everything. So now with 11 seconds left, the Pistons at least could try to seal the victory. Only thing with that is that Cade Cunningham had been doing well from the mid-range all game long, but this one just did not get the right bounce. They would get a favorable rebound with Tim Hardaway Jr. getting back out to the three-point line and chucking up a shot with a decent contest by Josh Hart. The only thing about that is that he was in his landing space, and as Tim Hardaway Jr. was going up, he was fouled by Josh Hart. But in real time, they didn't call it. They let it play on. And the Knicks will win another one in Detroit, 94-93, giving that fan base just another fucking heartbreak. Definitely sucks. Like, again, the Pistons have just continuously made such untimely mistakes in this one when you look at it. I mean, the 17 turnovers and allowing 20 points off of them don't necessarily help matters. If they would clean those up, they probably would have won this game outright. But that is besides the point. Because they were robbed, as many people would say. And even the NBA officials would get out a quick ass last 2-minute report. And they would confirm that there was supposed to be a foul called on Josh Hart on that specific play, which would have given the Pistons a chance to shoot 3 free throws and potentially win the game outright. But alas, that's not what ended up happening. The Knicks are the victors in this one, as Karl Anthony Towns had 27 points, 9 rebounds, and a block on 10 of 23 shooting with 5 threes. Jalen Brunson also had 32 points on 13 of 26 shooting with 4 threes, and also 11 assists with just 2 turnovers. That's pretty impressive when you understand that, obviously, the Pistons recognize he's going to be their primary ball handler. Josh Hart would have 14 points and 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals as well, on 4 of 9 shooting with 5 threes. And while it didn't necessarily hurt them here, because the contributions from those other guys was so great, at the same time, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Miles McBride all fucking sucked in this ball game. a combined 7 of 30 shooting for all of them, with just 3 threes between all of them, for a combined 21 points. Now, granted, they got the win here, so I guess it is what it is. But even for Mikal Bridges, 2 of those threes came from lucky-ass fadeaway shots in the corner. The most normal shots you weren't even able to make. So again, I guess it's a similar thing as well. But again, playing that game of what ifs isn't necessarily fair to either squad. The Knicks were still able to do what they did regardless. As for the Pistons, Cade Cunningham had 25 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists. 7 turnovers by himself is rough, and again, going to have to improve for the next game, which he did in game 2, but he would certainly need to replicate that, or otherwise the Pistons are done. Tobias Harris would have 18 points even, though on 6 of 15 shooting. And really their problem was spacing. Like, at least though they weren't necessarily shooting the best, the Knicks were able to stretch the floor much better. Now, Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley picked it up towards the end of the ball game, but those are the only 2 players who hit a 3 on the night. Nobody else made anything, and some didn't even bother attempting any shot from out there. And they shot just 24.1% from there. You're not always going to have a game tip in your favor when you are doing shit like that. Even if they got that close. All it took was just 1, and you couldn't even get that. So it's like, damn. But that sets up a very crucial game 5 in the Garden. The Pistons just need to be on their A game. Now, that's asking a lot, because if you want to get technical, I mean, I guess game 2, obviously they won, and Cade Cunningham went well, but even then, you can argue that they still crumbled towards the very end. So it wasn't necessarily the perfect game plan. But you have to put everything on the line. Because for a team that has honestly been through just darkness, literally, over the past decade or so, you don't want to have a season like this just be put to rest over something just relatively gut-wrenching once more. You don't want to go out like that. I can promise you. So they need to get this figured out. Moving on to the Lakers and Timberwolves. To start things out first, the most glaring thing you have to recognize is that Jackson Hayes would just play the first 4 minutes of this game and dip, because he was already causing too much shit. He wasn't playing exceptionally good defense at all, and he already had 2 fouls. The fit was just not the best, so they decided to get him out of there. Instantly, though, you would see the Lakers and the Timberwolves go best on best. I mean, even for most of the first half, you could argue that it was really just a matchup between Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle being able to pull off different plays on the Lakers defense and generate their own offense and account for others around them, and likewise for the Lakers with Doncic and LeBron. Interesting thing about that, though, LeBron would have just 4 field goal attempts during the entirety of this first half. And he was still on an even playing field with the scoring of Luka Doncic and both of those guys on the Timberwolves because they just could not stop fouling him to save their lives. Now, granted, some of these calls were questionable, but at the end of the day, like that man already logged like 11 free throw makes in the first half. That is just fucking absurd. There's honestly a good chance that might have increased just a little bit. But he was doing what needed to be done to try and even up this series for sure. As a team, though, their defense still gave them tremendous problems on that side of the basketball. Even Rudy Gobert was getting himself in position for tip dunks, though his offensive rebounding was still suspect at times. They were still able to just rip the ball from him. Like, there was literally a sequence where he fucking, I guess in like earlier portion of the game, he gets an offensive rebound, gets a chance to puts it back up, hits the front rim, puts it back up again, it rolls around the rim, gets it back again, and then gets the ball stolen from him by Austin Reeves. But I guess he wasn't the worst defensively. They still tried to hunt him, and he actually got Luka Doncic good one time. So I guess that's a win. In any case, while the Lakers did have themselves a lead, the Timberwolves were relentlessly on their heels. And while Anthony Edwards wasn't consistently going on any sort of flurry just yet, because he was more focused on getting other teammates involved and getting them prepared for the moments to come, Anthony Edwards himself would get involved during the stretch as he would get a clean floater and then also a pair of free throws before Julius Randle in a tied ball game would end off the half getting a buzzer beater. He, of all people, doing that is insane, and I knew that wasn't going to necessarily be replicated. It's safe to say that things would turn around for Edwards at the right time in terms of scoring, because most of the second half would see Julius Randle take a tremendous backseat. And even when he was getting the ball, he just wasn't efficient. He definitely crumbled down the stretch. He still got his a few times, but it wasn't consistent enough. That hurt them early on in this third quarter, and their defense as a whole suffered because the Lakers would then manage to go up by 11 points, capping off an overall strong run to open up the half of 14-0 essentially. The Timberwolves would finally score though, and they stormed back tremendously. They allowed a few more buckets to go, of course, over the course of an overall 36-23 run for the Lakers. I mean, Doncic got a few misses, but quite literally, as his percentage would suggest, he had a response in some of the wildest ways on most possessions, not all. Also, thing to note as well, the starting five for the Lakers would play this entire quarter. Now, while they would be up, could they necessarily maintain that over a fourth quarter that they desperately needed to close out in order to avoid being down 3-1? And it's safe to say that they would certainly test it, but it would backfire instantly, because Anthony Edwards would also match this, as the Lakers would become the first team to have a starting five play every single minute of the second half in a playoff series, which is very, very interesting. Anthony Edwards would do the same thing himself. Despite going down with a brief injury that honestly might not have been too serious in the moment, but still that could have forced him out, and he still decided to match it. With him being younger, having fresher legs, and just more energy overall, he came out the gates firing. And it caught the Lakers off guard to some extent. And he continued to exploit this time and time and time again. Everything in this quarter, essentially, was money for him. And while Luka Doncic would answer the call with a few more responses, it would end up being a rough quarter for him and for Austin Reeves in general. Though he had a stronger second half after not scoring anything in the first quarter, there were multiple shots that he missed from three that were wide open. Naturally, you would be counting on him to make those, but they weren't going in, and settling for that did hurt to an extent. Now, as we're getting later into it, Anthony Edwards would continue to use his gravity to affect how their defense was being played as Dante DiVincenzo would drive in for an and one. Now, Austin Reeves did hit a three-pointer this time to bring the game within one. And then you would have LeBron James get a clutch block on a driving Dante DiVincenzo. I don't know why he bothered trying it on him, of all people, but I guess you can't play scared in that moment. Anyways, it would lead to an easy possession for the Lakers, and they would actually take back the lead temporarily on a Dorian Finney-Smith three from the top of the key. However, in just a lazy sequence, you have Austin Reeves being stuck behind Jaden McDaniels and getting put in a blender for an and one play that saw McDaniels get all three possible points and give the Timberwolves a lead. There was also a late play as well where the Timberwolves would get the ball back immediately after another game saw LeBron throw an errant pass inbounds. He would also have another errant play on Anthony Edwards, because rather than just forcing him into that position where it would make it difficult for him to hit a shot, he decides to foul him on his wrist, and that would just give the Timberwolves 3 points, allowing them to go up by 3. The Lakers had just one more chance, and they knew that they were not going to allow the ball to get in Luka or LeBron's hands. Somebody else had to go and tie up the ball game for them. It was going to be Austin Reeves, and he had a pretty tough shot from the corner, and it bricked, putting the Lakers down 3-1 and giving the Timberwolves a 116-113 win in this game. LeBron would have 27, 12, and 8 assists with 3 steals and 3 blocks on 13 of 28 shooting and 5 threes. 5 of 9 shooting, 2 threes and 15 of 18 from the line for him. He did not score a single time in the fourth quarter. Luka Doncic, on the other hand, had 38 points on 13 of 28 shooting with 5 threes. And just 2 assists for him, which is such a low mark. So once more, they were going to settle for blitzing him on those potential pick and rolls to just force the ball out of his hands, but not necessarily grant open looks for other guys. Hachimura, though, still managed to break through a few times. He would have 10 third quarter points and finish the game with 23 overall and 5 rebounds on 9 of 16 shooting with 5 threes. Austin Reeves had 17 points with 5 threes, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists with 2 blocks. As for the Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards had a monster game, all with just a single turnover. He had 43 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists on 12 of 23 shooting with 5 threes, and also had 14 free throw makes. Julius Randle was a perfect complement earlier on and would have 25, 7, and 3 on 9 of 22 shooting. Jaden McDaniels added 16 points and 11 rebounds. Rudy Gobert added 10 rebounds. Naz Reid had 12 points on 4 of 7 shooting off the bench as well. It has been their Achilles heel all series long. For the Lakers, they have to figure out this defensive issue, or they are going to continue to suffer. And they desperately need it. Now, obviously, they'll have home court advantage in Game 5. But if you can't hunker down on defense, and this gets into another situation where you are in a tight ball game late, the odds might be very thin for the Lakers to get the job done. Now, granted, it's not impossible. Well, yes, LeBron does have a 20% win percentage when it comes to these types of situations. At the same time, he did it on the biggest stage against my damn team in the finals. If anyone would understand how to pull off a comeback of this sort, it would be him. And they have the talent. They have the talent to do so. But they need to get some parts of their game plan together, or they do not stand a chance. Simply put. Moving on to the Magic and the Celtics, and to be honest, we saw the great strengths of both teams in this one. To start out especially, I mean, the Magic's defense on their three-point shooting, the Celtics, even though the Celtics were still able to cash some home, they were shooting horrifically bad to start out the game from three. And the Magic, to their credit, were able to beat them from an efficiency standpoint very early on. But what hurt them in this one was their penchant to just settle for it. They are not a team that can go match up against another in terms of volume from that area on the floor and win. They can't do it. If you get a few at a time, fine. You cannot, if you are them, fall in love with shooting the three ball. And it's hard to do in those moments in this day and age where we have seen multiple three-point revolutions. All of it being started by Stephen Curry. Of course, we've seen it. So it's hard to account for that. But I'm like, dude, again, it just doesn't help you. It makes the problem worse. And again, their defense was very fucking good. I mean, even with those few three-point shots, nothing really came easy. You know, like Tatum got a few buckets to go, but Brown was getting X'd out for a little bit, and Porzingis was also getting X'd out for a little bit. They were doing as best of a job as they could. For the Celtics, though, you can't necessarily keep a winning team down for long. They've been here before. They've now won an NBA championship. So they understand the number of ways that it takes for themselves to get back in these ball games and take commanding leads. Which, I mean, they were able to take a lead. You can't necessarily call it commanding because, again, the Magic would continue to start trying to incorporate more offense revolving around the mid-range and revolving around paint points. And with them doing that, they would make this an all-out fight. Now, at the end of the quarter, I mean, you still had Jason Tatum doing a signature move and getting another one of fucking buzzer beater three-pointer to go. Literally, in back-to-back games, you have a Celtics player doing it, which is insane. Not to be outdone, though, Corey Joseph, of all people, would have an ideal response to open up the third quarter, where the game just kept on going back and forth between both of these squads. Now, the Magic never possessed a lead in this case, but the game was still very winnable. You get into the fourth, though, and the Magic had a lot better of a game plan here. Now, again, their defense deteriorated completely because now they started to allow them to get in a rhythm with open shooters, and the rest was history for them. Even with allowing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to actually make this a game and get it within 2, it still wasn't enough because their defense just crumbled. Jason Tatum went off in this one with Paolo Banchero, I believe, as the primary matchup because in some cases earlier on, he had been going against Anthony Black, and that wasn't necessarily the wisest course of action because he continued to torch him. But he would do the same to Paolo Banchero, getting him into foul trouble, getting to the line, and continuing to make timely shots. Now, most of the rest of this game finished with free throws because, again, they could not manage to stay disciplined on that front as a whole, largely in part due to Banchero. And on that notion, the Celtics beat the Magic 107-98. Ironically enough, as one of the graphics detailed, though they had done well on the road relatively this season, they had yet to win in Orlando this year, the Celts. So the fact that they got it in this fashion is pretty great, even for their standards, because they did not necessarily look as though they would have this in the bag. They could not generate offense from the three-point line consistently enough, even if they got some shots late, which I guess is more important. But 9 of 31 shooting from deep, far below their average. In a year that, again, has seen them drop in efficiency massively, which could be their undoing in any future round, but for now, it's fine, I suppose. They also had 10 less field goal attempts than the Magic. And yet, again, just through the will of a champion, were able to pull out the victory. Aided largely by Jason Tatum, who would have 37 points and 14 rebounds with 3 assists and steals on 10 of 25 shooting. Jaylen Brown had 21 points and 11 rebounds on 6 of 16 shooting. Porzingis had 19 on 10 of 14 shooting, and Derek White had 18, 7 rebounds and 7 assists with just a single turnover on 7 of 11 shooting. Peyton Pritchard, interestingly enough, played 26 minutes and did not score a single point, but did contribute 2 assists and a rebound. What is with all these players going scoreless in the playoffs, man? You would have a couple more here when it comes to Gary Harris and Caleb Houston, but again, Gary Harris did play some good defense, and even Caleb Houston got a good defensive possession on Jason Tatum there, but nothing too consistent enough to warrant that lack of contribution. Banchero would have 31 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists on 12 of 32 shooting, which is absolutely bad. When you really break it down, that's just not necessarily a good thing. You got to do a much better job of scoring than that. Also, just below average from the free throw line as well, which certainly hurt also. Wagner had 24 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists on 10 of 22 shooting. Corey Joseph had 12 points and 6 assists in a starting role without a single turnover. And Anthony Black had 10. Wendell Carter Jr. had 9 points and 11 rebounds with 3 assists. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope even added 8 points with 2 3-pointers, including that crucial one late. That if the Magic just did everything, if they literally, you have got to just find your own identity as an offense. If you were willing to commit to that, they probably would have won the game. I'm not going to lie. But the Celtics head back to TD Garden with a chance to close and with most of the momentum in their favor. So it's just not necessarily the best look for the Magic right now. And then moving on to the Bucks and the Pacers. Most interesting thing to point out to start out was the fact that Miles Turner went perfect from the field with 9 early first quarter points. It wasn't just him getting dimes from Tyrese Halliburton like the usual. There were some sequences where he got down in isolation and got his own shot in the lane. And that was surprising to see for a player who had struggled that mightily in the last game. To already come out on fire was huge for the Pacers overall, and the whole team really felt that. They would get up to a vast first quarter lead, going up by as much as 12 in this one. Though the Bucks would storm back a little bit. And for context as well, during all of this, you would have Damian Lillard get injured early, and let's just say that he will never return. I will get into the full reason why in the developments following my final coverage of this particular round of games. But with that being said, Lillard being out for this time, and the Pacers already being on cloud nine on the offensive side of the ball, it was just downhill from there overall. It's not to say that the Bucks didn't put in effort, but it felt like, if nobody else, you really had Giannis just being placed in similar positions that he had been in years past, where he's trying his hardest to lead the team, and there is nobody else complimenting him in such a way to suffice and truly keep pace with this team. Because that is what it takes when facing off against the Pacers. You have to be able to match their energy, especially when it comes to their transition offense. Like, they literally live up to their name as one of the fastest teams in terms of pace in the league still. And with the ball constantly moving around as well, obviously Giannis has great defense. But in those moments, with that kind of rotation, you're going to need your other perimeter wings and on-ball defenders to step it up. And the Pacers literally got every single shot they were looking for in this one. They could not miss at all. Like, it was just, it was rough. It just continued on and on. Obviously, Tyrese Halliburton was setting up the entire offense. Wasn't necessarily doing a whole bunch of scoring, though it would ramp up a little bit. But you had just other players. You had Aaron Nesmith getting buckets to go. Obi Toppin at the end of this third quarter would get a good fucking lead pass from Tyrese Halliburton into another buzzer-beating layup. TJ McConnell could not be stopped. This man literally goes up against Ryan Rollins and turns him into a fucking dancer, bro. He could not stick with him. was getting shots to go as well. Jarris Walker was hitting threes. We don't really see that from him all that much, but it was happening. And at will, too. Got to the point where Giannis even had 18 points in the third quarter, and it didn't mean anything. Because the Pacers were just right back on their shit time and time and time again. And ultimately, that was the Bucks' undoing in this one. They would lose 129 to 103 as Tyrese Halliburton would have 17 points, 8 rebounds, and 15 assists with a steal on 6 of 11 shooting with 2 threes. Andrew Nembhard would have 20. Miles Turner would have 23. Pascal Siakam would have 12. Aaron Nesmith would have 14. TJ McConnell would have 15. Jarris Walker would have 12. And Obi Toppin would have 13. That is just ridiculous. 8 players in double digits. All of them combining to shoot 60.2% from the field, 46.2% from the three-point line, and 84.6% at the stripe. Everything was just falling for them. They controlled the boards. They controlled pacing in the fast break. They were having their way in the paint. There was even a sequence where Miles Turner managed to dunk on Giannis to start off the third quarter. That type of shit just got them even more amped up to continue doing what they were doing. And the Bucks could offer no resistance. Even with Giannis having his 28 points, 15 rebounds, and 6 assists on 9 of 20 shooting. Kevin Porter Jr. having 23 points and 6 assists with 5 rebounds is okay, but you can really take that with a grain of salt. A lot of that came during garbage time. A good portion of it. Bobby Portis had 14. And then no other player even got to 10. Obviously, we can't count Dame because he ended up getting injured. But with all of that being said, it does not look too promising for the Bucks right now. They have to go back to Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indiana to take this team on again tonight. So, and you just came off of a loss like that. Yes, it is Gainbridge Fieldhouse. I'm right. Let's go. But yeah, that's just not. It's not looking too promising for them, and it does hurt. Giannis is just too great of a player to be in this situation where in literally the past, 3 years or so, he has suffered first round exits. It's, he is too great of a player to consistently have to go through that. But it can't be worse than what the development will be towards the very end of this video. And it also can't be worse for the Bucks right now than it would end up being for the Heat. Because, let's face it, at least the Bucks were able to steal a game. The Heat, on the other hand, oh my goodness, they just looked defeated. They get back into Kaseya Center. And you would naturally think that you would be having a team try their absolute hardest to avoid the sweep, like the Bucks were able to do, like the Grizzlies at least attempted to do. The greatest takeaway I have from this game is that I did not see that at all from this damn Heat team. signs should have rung off when I noted that after just a few minutes in the first quarter, after being down by a large amount, but it was just like a 12-3 lead or so at that point, they take Kel'el Ware on the ball game, knowing that his presence on the court amplifies their defensive flexibility. And he's just out of the game. He does not play until the fourth quarter. And shit just continues to hit the fan. I should have known right there what time it was with this team. And it just piled up over and over and over and over again, as they would just cycle through graphic after graphic stating how prolific this team had been throughout this series. The Cavs were the fourth team in the last 40 years to put up 120 points in each of the first three playoff games in the series. Also, after halftime, they displayed a graphic stating that they were the third team since 1980 to average 50, 40, 80 splits in a playoff series. Well, no, this was in the second quarter, but yes, all of that proficiency from one team, and the fact that the game prior to this was the largest margin of victory for them without Darius Garland. That just reached an even higher level of craziness in this one, because up and down the rotation, everyone was hitting shots. Everybody. Jared Allen was getting buckets to go. Like, he started off the game with a fucking easy transition dunk on just an asinine turnover. And that's the thing about it. Like, yes, their defense is that good, but there were some cases where I'm just looking and seeing that some of these turnovers were preventable. Some of these shots were certainly makeable, and you're just throwing them away. You're missing these shots. You're just making the dumbest of passes, like you don't know how to operate an offense. And you're just letting this lead pile up over and over and over again. As Evan Mobley crashes in for just an easy dunk without contest. As DeAndre Hunter continues to hit three-pointer after three-pointer. Donovan Mitchell doesn't even have to have the craziest performances, and even he's getting shots to green. Sam Merrill coming in and cashing. By halftime, the score was literally 72-33. Akin to the very first game in the fucking Thunder Grizzlies series. But that was, even then, the very first game. Now you have a chance to try and avoid a sweep, to do anything you possibly can to prevent that from happening, and you are getting your ass kicked. And then don't get me started on what the fuck Ty Jerome was doing in the second half. Nigga hits a step back three-pointer over Pelle Lawson. Almost does it again. And if he would have hit that second one, I would have went ballistic. But then he caps off the third quarter with a fucking half-court buzzer beater. One-upping what Davion Mitchell did in the first quarter to bring Miami's scoring output to just 17 in that quarter. I didn't even bother getting any kind of notes down for the fourth quarter. I didn't even bother tracking any parts of this run. The only thing I had to really point out is that Chuma Okeke, of all people, was able to log minutes in this series in 2025. Because nothing about the game really needed any sort of deep breakdown. We were seeing this team get demolished at face value. There's nothing more that can necessarily be stated in that moment. They were demoralized. They wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. No one wanted to be there. And then on the broadcast, we have the nerve to bring up heat culture this and heat culture that. Let me tell you that right now. With a game like this, that shit is dead. I don't want to hear nothing about no fucking heat culture. Because no Miami Heat team would go out like this. You would still show some kind of fucking pride and desire to fight in a game like this. You wouldn't lose by fucking 55 points in an elimination game. You wouldn't have fucking Tyler Hero coming out here and in 31 minutes of play putting up just 4 points, a rebound, and an assist on 1 of 10 shooting. You wouldn't. Now, granted, it had been a great season for him overall, and being matched up against a team as deep as this to deploy any one of their defenders on him, it was a down series. But even for that standard, that is shitty. Davion Mitchell had just 8 points. Andrew Wiggins would get up to double digits in garbage time. Bam Adebayo would get up to double digits along with a 13-point, 12-rebound double-double in garbage time. None of that shit mattered. Even Nikola Jovic, who had been struggling all season, well, all series long, wanted to just come out in garbage time and put up 24 points, which was the highest output for any player in this game. But again, all garbage time, all irrelevant stuff. They'll let you get those at that point because they handled their business. They could afford to put in the bench early. They weren't worried about y'all asses. A team that shot a combined 36% from the field and 20.4% from the three-point line while chucking up 49 fucking attempts. And it was probably way worse before they went on this burst after the starters were subbed out. It just wasn't worth a care for them at that point. It didn't matter. And then we get to the Donovan Mitchell, who put up 22 points on 8 of 15 shooting in this ballgame with 4 threes, as he would become the 6th player in NBA history to have at least 500 points in their first 20 playoff games with multiple teams. You would also have DeAndre Hunter put up 19 on great shooting. Jerome with 18 on great shooting. Evan Mobley with 17 on great shooting. Jared Allen with 14 on perfect shooting. Javonte Green stepped in and got himself 11 points for the fuck of it. Jalen Tyson got 6 points. Dean Wade had 5. Tristan Thompson scored. Because they had all the reign to do so with you getting your shit rocked in this game. They dominated in every metric. There's no way. Keeping in line with their 50, 40, 80 shooting splits, they shot 54.7% from the field, 46.8% from 3, and 88% from the line. They won the battle of turnovers in dominant fashion. 28-5 in terms of points off turnovers. And again, everything was cooking for them. They would just have the easiest sweep imaginable, winning 4-0 as the Heat would deservedly be eliminated. The Cavs are awaiting, I think, the winner of the Magic and Celtics series, so that could be very interesting for them. I'm not necessarily going to say that they would kick their asses, but let's just say that if the Cavs do face off against the Celtics, they have certainly given them great matchups all season long. So I don't expect that to be any different when we get into postseason basketball. As for the Heat, like I said, that Heat culture mantra, that shit is dead. It is outdated. I don't want to hear it anymore. Because it means absolutely nothing if you are going to have your players go out there and perform like that. It is horrible. And with that being the case, even though it has been a rough season overall, It feels like that is a sign that a reset needs to be in order. So I'm looking at Pat Riley. Obviously, he's a well-respected individual in the NBA landscape. But when I see that pan out, something has to give. So he might need to seriously consider stepping away this season and passing the torch to somebody else. Because to go out like this is unacceptable. And for most other people, let's be honest here, for most other people in the NBA, that would be a death sentence to their tenure for a team. Now, Pat Riley, with being as accomplished as he is, might be a little above that, but still. I mean, come on. That's just, it's not good at all. And I just, like, oh my goodness. And then moving on to the final game of this stretch, we have the Warriors and the Rockets. And to start things out, the Warriors would start out with a 16-4 run of their own. Not even on the backs of Stephen Curry. Brandon Pajemski and Draymond Green would hit multiple three-pointers during this time. All of the other players were getting involved, aided in large part by the return of Jimmy Butler. The third didn't really have knowledge on whether or not he would return in the game, but he did manage to do so. And that opened up a lot of different things for this lineup. Now, even after that, though, both defenses were able to hunker down for a little bit, and the Warriors would still have a lead for just a brief period of time. But aided by Fred VanVleet's shooting and Alperen Sengun's steady play, honestly, all around, the Rockets were able to take themselves a lead of their own, going on an overall 29-15 run, as VanVleet continued to just light it up from deep after apparently entering this game shooting 7 of 29 from the three-point line prior. But not to be outdone, you would have Quentin Post respond with a three of his own before lucky ass Dillon Brooks would get something going. And then this shit just takes away from the game, but it needs to be discussed because this nigga Dillon Brooks is just a fucking dirty bro. He is a bum, straight up. He wants to portray himself as a villain, and in reality, he hasn't necessarily done anything to back that up or make that legitimate in any way. He just goes around and he just fucking hits the shit out of people, gets them injured, and then wants to act all tough on the other side of the court. So the same thing would essentially happen over the course of this entire night, but most notably during this pause in the action at around the 7-minute mark of the second quarter. Because Draymond is known for his hard screens. He set a hard one on Amen Thompson, I'm not going to lie, and I was hoping that he was all right because he was down, sprawled out on the ground during this time. Meanwhile, you have Dillon Brooks not even necessarily worried about that. You could do a number of things in that situation. You could go and check on Amen Thompson, but instead engaging in the play after the whistle is blown. This nigga hip checks Stephen Curry just a mere few weeks after dealing with a fucking pelvic contusion to try and fuck up his lower region down there. So I guess Stephen Curry points at him with 2 fingers to signify that he had 2 fouls at that point. And then this nigga Dillon Brooks tries to take the fucking ball from him. Then he gets pushed around by Draymond Green. And then a whole sequence of madness ensues. And, naturally I'd be worrying about Draymond getting himself in situations like that because it's par for the course for him. But I couldn't blame him here because you really have to question what the fuck this nigga is doing sometimes. Like any number of things he'll try to pull out to get people fucking hurt. And you can't put it past him. I mean, he would literally do it multiple times throughout this game. He literally did it last game with trying to injure Curry's already injured shooting hand. It's ridiculous. It makes no fucking sense, man. It's absolutely absurd. So after that sequence, they would tee up Steph, Draymond, and Dillon Brooks all in one fell swoop. And the Rockets would be granted a free throw in possession. Now, Jalen Green would miss said free throw, but Fred VanVleet would keep it cooking. The Warriors, though, would storm back with a brief run of buckets. The Rockets, though, would be the team to close out the second quarter well in this one, due to just a few errant turnovers from the Warriors side, honestly. And they would go up by 7 heading into the third quarter. Now, they would be able, the Warriors, to go on a 22-13 overall stretch. As, again, it's not necessarily like Stephen Curry was going the craziest, even though he was able to get a few buckets at the rim, more so than 3. But you had Buddy Hield shooting relatively well. Quentin Post continuing to give great contributions all around. They would have Brandon Podziemski continue it going. Just beautiful fadeaway shot, getting other three-pointers to go. And even, eventually, starting out the fourth quarter, making even more. Just getting to the rim for buckets. Even getting a potential and one opportunity on a beautiful drive and make. But again, not to be outdone, the Rockets were just continuously in it with the steady presence of Alperen Sengun. He would have 18 points in this period alone. And that would stand throughout the fourth, as again, it's not like you had Jalen Green showing up. Fred VanVleet was his kind of partner in crime here. But if the Rockets wanted to keep things in their favor and potentially win this game to tie up the series, they were going to be reliant on Sengun. That was made very clear. They just wanted to get him all those matchups in the post against anyone, even with their taller lineups being in. And to counter that, the Warriors did deploy Trayce Jackson-Davis for the first time in this series to put him on Alperen Sengun. He deferred a few times in that situation, but he still understood the assignment and decided to go at him, converting on a few opportunities. The Warriors were still right in it, even with all of the odds just being stacked against this being likely, Stephen Curry would get the ball with just around a couple seconds left, pump fake Alperen Sengun and get that man jumping into the fucking stands and then cashing a three-pointer at the buzzer to bring the game within 1. But the Rockets would go on another flurry of buckets themselves, getting up to a 101-97 lead. And then it was go time for the squad. They would go on a 12-5 overall run, truly locking down on defense. Even with the inevitable response from Fred VanVleet and even a good clutch bucket late from Sengun, with the shot making from Hield and the ability to draw fouls from Jimmy Butler, because it scared off an albeit better contest from Jabari Smith Jr., who would get scored on by him. After this Fred VanVleet 3, you would have Jimmy Butler III get fouled by none other than who? And again, I'm telling you, this nigga is just a dirty scumbag. He literally sees that Jimmy Butler III kind of like gets his like same area that the pelvic contusion took place at. He kind of re-aggravates it slightly, and he decides to contest him in such a way to where one of his hands is literally trying to hit that core spot of his body in the moment he is up in the air. And as he comes down, he just feels it even more as a direct result of that. I didn't even mention that Stephen Curry, while he would play for most of this game, was taken back to the locker room for a brief second following that entire situation because of that damn hip check. It is ridiculous. Like, bro, like I said, man, someday there is going to be a player who comes in and gives Dillon Brooks his due. He will get his ass kicked someday because collectively, niggas are getting sick of this shit, bro. You cannot consistently be getting away with this and expect no repercussions whatsoever. So it's gonna go down like that. He would make his free throws there. Draymond would also have to suffer as well because, bro, after another situation involving him and fucking Tari Eason, he was deep in foul trouble. And he had to just take a seat. They would have to conserve him throughout the entire fourth quarter for defense. I mean, he did his best, but they couldn't play him every single second. He would come in for these last few, though, after a couple of Warriors misses generally from the field and, needing a stop. You would want to count on him. It came down right to him. And as he's guarding Alperen Sengun, he gets a good enough contest on him to force the miss, as Jimmy Butler III would crash in for another rebound, get fouled, convert a couple more free throws. Now, Fred VanVleet would get the ball, would have a pretty good look, honestly, at a three-pointer over Kevon Looney, but smartly, Looney did not foul, and the three-pointer ended up being just short, giving the Warriors a 109-106 win. As Stephen Curry in this one would have 17 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists on 6 of 13 shooting with 2 threes. The real stars of the night, though, were, of course, Jimmy Butler III and Brandon Podziemski as well. To highlight Podziemski here, because his ability to get buckets in this game, again, even in a game that did not see Curry necessarily doing a whole bunch, continued to keep that defense on its heels. And it's, in some cases, because what would be the case for him is that he would naturally settle for just taking some set shots at the three-point line a few times in a game and then working his way down to driving in the paint and getting buckets that way. But he wasn't necessarily just, like, when he got the look, he fired it up. Don't get me wrong. His catching and shooting in this game was great. But he was also, on multiple occasions, on three-point line and in the paint, just able to take people off the dribble and get crafty buckets at the right time, while also contributing 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, and a block. An all-around player that is much appreciated as far as this team goes and valued, highly valued. There's a reason why he just would not be involved in any trades in the offseason or at the trade deadline. And we are seeing that come to fruition now, with the aid of Jimmy Butler III, of course, who would have 27 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists with a block on 7 of 12 shooting, a three-pointer, and all 12 shots from the line being made. Buddy Hield will also have 15 again. Post had 13, 4, 3 on 4 of 11 shooting. I mean, Draymond, again, very great defender overall. while his offense can be questioned, I mean, literally, he opened up the game with the first 6 points and did not score anything afterwards. But clearly, his impact on the court goes a lot further than just that. It was just good that he was able to avoid getting kicked out of the game. Because, bro, it literally got so close. Like, there was another sequence where he, pushed away pushed away Amin Thompson after having a conversation with Tariq and just fucking around. And I swore they called a foul on him for that. They did not. He just decided to sit out of the game. Because, honestly, at that point, anything is really on the table. They could call a foul on you at any point if they're going to look at that and try to get you out of the ball game. So he would just give it up for a little bit after that. But it paid off, as the Warriors would take full advantage of home court. And now they have a chance on Wednesday to head into Houston and clinch the series. Now, as far as this loan development goes, it's a very unfortunate one when looking at a player like Damian Lillard. And honestly, his outlook just generally for him being able to even operate the same as an individual living life on the daily. Because in this game against the Pacers in Game 4 early, he suffered just a horrible outcome as he literally stretches out his leg. He just can't even explode correctly, and he just falls to the ground instantly. It will later be revealed and confirmed by multiple sources that he suffered an Achilles tear. And honestly, again, it would obviously take him out for the rest of the playoffs. But we genuinely do not know what that would mean for the rest of his career. I mean, a lot of stuff would come out as well, too, during this process. But first and foremost, you want to obviously hope that he gets better and can recover from this speedily, genuinely. Giannis was echoing the same sentiment. You even had Tyrese Halliburton echoing the same sentiment. Naturally, they're going to make it look like those two hate one another, but even he references the thrill of the competition and just a genuine respect for him off the court. No one wants to see anybody go out like that. So you hope that he gets better during this time and that he can fully recover. Because during this game, after it happened, they would also detail that, during this process of being cleared for action, immediately following the removal of the clot, apparently, from his leg, his right leg, he was only cleared in the 5 days prior to run, not get into full 5-on-5 basketball action, but to simply run, just move around in general directions without any other factors playing into the potential pausing of movement whatsoever into anything too strenuous. Just work your way back into it, not necessarily go full speed so early on. And in hearing that, exactly what I feared ended up being true. Now again, there's still a chance then that the blood clot was actually fully removed with the blood thinners. So in that notion, I might have been very suspicious about it, but ultimately wrong. I ended up being right for an albeit different reason, in that he simply just wasn't ready. He wasn't ready to play. And the Bucks decided to clear him, to have him rush back as a last-ditch effort to win this thing. And it just wasn't worth it. I mean, obviously, Damian Lillard being a competitor, naturally he's going to have some say in getting back on the court. But at the same time, you know the odds of him saying no to playing in this series are going to be low given what the hell happened last year with him. And given the fact that this is the playoffs, and given how much of a competitor he is, he's not going to turn that down. And in not turning that down, the course of the remainder of his career might have altered. Because this is bigger than basketball now. It's about you being there. I know he knows that he's been, honestly, since his move to the Bucks, he's been going through some crazy shit when it comes to family. But you're trying to be there for those guys now. It goes much further than basketball at this point. So again, there's honestly a genuine question to be asked as to whether or not he chooses to even give basketball another chance. Like, we might have, I don't know if he would want to go out that way. Again, as a person just driven by that kind of mentality. But I don't know. Nothing is really certain at that point. Any number of things can happen. You just wish him all the best. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video, but that'll do it for this one. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.